was great. And then they took a digestive system out so they could paint nutrients on their skin. And they've been doing this for a long time, for perhaps millions of years. I don't know. And then they were sent to Earth by other ET races to study mankind, which is where you get this laboratory kind of environment where they don't have feelings. They aren't going to be kind, and emotional with you. They're going to treat you like you're an object. And so that's what they were doing. And gradually, their cloning stopped working. Now they're in a position like, oh, damn, if we don't have a race to be born into, then we're not going to exist anymore. And then they realized, oh, my God, our DNA matches Earth human DNA like 99%. And then they realized that Earth humans have a beautiful emotional nature. So the point is not to not have feelings, but to have good feelings. And the point isn't to have bad sex, but to have good sex. And the point is to be able to get along. I mean, on many worlds, if one of those ETs came here and they had to go through what you go through just getting out of bed in the morning, they'd probably have heart failure. They couldn't take the stress. So we've accomplished a lot. And in my own spiritual journey, I realized, like when you throw a basketball at a hoop, as it leaves your fingers, you know with total emotional certainty that ball is going to go through the net, and then it does. That's how you do things. Like I've projected myself to another locations. I've been in 2 places at the same time. I've done all kinds of remote viewing and very interesting things that I developed on my own. And I kept thinking that the way to do it was thinking about thinking, and I kept getting nowhere. And then one day in my heart, I believed I was doing it, and I did it. And I'm like, oh, my God. So I think that's what the Zetas missed out on. And so this hybrid race is going to have all the physical attributes of Earth humans, but we're going to have a telepathic brain and live hundreds of years and have open contact with other ET races. And it's really an exciting time. I meet these religions where people go, well, after the change, that my body's going to be resurrected. Well, I don't know about you. I don't know if I'd want to see my body again, resurrected or not. I'm ready to move on to a new model, because you're like a soul in a vehicle. So it's just like when you go to buy a new car, you're going to buy a car from 1912, or you're going to buy a 2015 whatever with all the possibilities. So, you're a body in a vehicle. So I wouldn't get so attached to the body that you're in. But for the Anunnaki, I think they had a selfish purpose. They created us as good gold mining slaves, and they didn't really want much else out of us. And so there are still some remnants on Earth. And to me, that's what the statues of Easter Island are. That's them. And so I'm not really excited about the Anunnaki. I think that's a step backwards for us, because there are so many, like I said, I would say a third of the Earth has reached such a point of metaphysical oneness with the best of everything that they cannot be held back. You can't have a threshold level like that and then say, well, now you're sentenced to repeat everything over again for thousands of years. No, these people, and I'm including a lot of listeners for Revolution Radio and listeners to your radio show in particular, these people are ready to graduate, and they should. And this is the graduation. But if you don't like that, you can be reborn on some other planet. Your soul will arrange for you to be in the right circumstances for you to take your next step. And in relationships, like when you're looking for a partner and you can't find one, your soul will arrange for you to meet the person that allows you to take your next step. So if you have something you're not realizing, you will meet a partner who's like a mirror to your own self. And when you're dealing with them, you're seeing what you need to learn to progress. And you're helping them in the same way. When they deal with you, they're learning what they need to progress. And then once you've accomplished that, the two of you can go anywhere you want. So I think this is, these issues are all intertwined, so I find this a very interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just say from my perspective, the Anunnaki weren't all the same, and that Enlil, the commander, was a disciplinarian who brought the military dictatorship and the principle of divide and rule to Earth, whereas our immediate janitors, Enki, Ningishita, and Nimma, deliberately created us to do better, to be more living. And I really understand what Glenn's saying when he's saying that there's that the spirit of Enki is the same spirit as the Christ, which we all have within us, which is the ability to become spiritual and to transcend the military dictatorship and the one-upsmanship and hierarchy and the derogation of women that Enlil and his ilk have perpetrated upon this planet.
And then I want to say something, then we'll go round to Glenn and Janet as well. There's perfection in the amnesia. There's evidence that we have come in here on by choice, that there's no victims, and we chose to be in this amnesia so that we could further diversify creation and maximize diversity and have these experiences, much like when we go to a movie theater, we agree to go and be hypnotized for 2 hours so we can enjoy the movie. There was an Errol the Gray. She was the one that was captured at Roswell and held for a length of time. And she communicated that she was an eternal being and that the gray body was not her true form, but that she had projected her consciousness down into this, she called it the doll body. And she said that and she just left her body and left it behind. She didn't die. She just moved into another form, which she said that their main colony was in the asteroid belt. So I think that there may be interdimensionals that are able to, or extraterrestrials or whatever they are, to just kind of move their bodies from one form to another at will. So there's evidence of that. And I forgot my third point, so I'll pass it on to either Janet or Glenn. What would you like to add to this part of the conversation?
Janet, go ahead.
Oh, come over here, Janet. Yeah. Darling.
Well, we watch Ice too. What do you have?
When I've been since I'm part of this breeding program, and it seemed like it started. I probably was going through it for 20 years. And at the beginning, they would, the hybrids looked more like the ETs, the Greys. But as time went on, they became looking more and more human. And pretty soon you really couldn't tell the difference. But what I noticed that they were very much brighter than we are, the hybrids. And,
very happy, too.
Very happy, very intelligent, and I would go and see them in a classroom, and they would speak mind to mind, so telepathically, so, there wasn't a lot of spoken words. Also, I feel like, you know how sometimes things just appear on the wall? I forget what it's called. ETs can, like, come in a, show themselves like in the wood or on the walls, or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one day on my wall in the kitchen where I do dishes, I feel what we're going to look like, these hybrids, is what appeared over my kitchen sink, and it stayed there. It's still there to this day. And it's an ET with a huge head, brain, and it's in the whole shape, and I feel like that's one of the ways we're going to look. Is very, very, the frontal lobes are very big, very large. So, and that just sort of manifested itself.
Also, you say that at one point, this has been going on for such a long time, a lot of her children have grown up, and one of her daughters said to her, "You want to take a trip around the solar system on a flying saucer?"
Yeah,
and took her.
Lots of fun.
And they just laughed the whole time. So
yeah, really
this is
fun.
not something, if you listen to Dr. Jacobs or people like that.
Very loving, unconditional love. I mean, every time I deal with them, I feel such tremendous love.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual experience.
First, I get an intense feeling of anxiousness, because they get such a high energy. So I get very anxious, and I know they're coming. But then then it's very loving.
Wow.
Like a love that we don't have for each other yet. We haven't developed that or something.
Unconditional,
As
yeah.
human.
Yeah, the
And-
unconditional love.
Right. So in my own experience, that's how I feel.
You know, my experience with them too, because they don't normally, I don't have any hybrid children with them or do anything like that, but there was a time like Janet was quite distraught and I thought, well, I'm going to ask the Zetas to help her. So she said to me, it was in the afternoon, she said she was going to take a nap and I said, well, I'm going to go up on the mountain and split wood. So, and I'd be gone for about an hour and a half. So as I left the house, I said, Zetas, would you look after Janet? So I split wood for an hour and a half and I came back and I figured she'd be sound asleep and she's jumping around the house in a t-shirt and her underwear and she's all excited. And I said, what happened? And she goes, as soon as you left the house, two grays, a short one and a tall one, entered my bedroom because she was getting ready to take the nap. And the tall one, she was standing up, and the tall one walked right up to her and touched nose to nose and then entered her body. And I thought I had asked them to help her and look after her for, maybe 10 seconds before that. So the response was like, just right then. And then, of course, she was on psychiatric medication, so you wonder, well, what would happen in a world disaster? As long as she's on the medication, then you wouldn't know there was a problem, but what if she didn't have the medication? And then she has all these doctors and counselors and stuff, and they all simultaneously, the next time she went to see them, they all said, well, you're so healthy now that we think that you should try going without medication. So it was really interesting, because they weren't in contact with each other, and there's no way of knowing how they all reached this simultaneous conclusion. But that was what Janet and I had been discussing in the days before that, like when this worldwide disaster and you can't go down to the store and buy anything, what is going to happen to people who are on medication? And so all within the space of a week, that got answered.
Happened. Yeah.
I don't take the hot, the really like the zines and the real scary ones. Mine are more mellow I deal with mostly post-traumatic stress from abuse. And that's bad enough, but, so I went off for a year and survived just fine, but then too many things happened at once.
3 things happened at once.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, she went back on medication.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that as long as she could do it, and that as long as there wasn't this terrible confluence, because certain things can trigger responses, and we all have beliefs and reactions that we build into our everyday lives, and it's important to sit down and say, what attachments do I have to certain things that I can get rid of now? I've outgrown them. My understanding has grown. And one understanding everyone can benefit for is that fear, F-E-A-R, is forgetting everything's all right.
But one funny thing about the ETs is they will follow you around. It's funny. They may not know where you are for a couple days, but they'll find you. And they will find you in hospitals, and they'll come right through the walls and
No, I've seen that they really care about Janet, and they
they'll
really
come right
are
around.
looking after her in a beautiful way where, in her own family, she was disposable,
Okay, Glenn, what would you like to add?
But going back to the initial assertion by Gordon about us being a blunted intelligence, I like to connect the Bible with the Sumerian text as two halves of a whole. And in my book series, The Books of Isis, I always open them with the quote from Isaiah 6:9, where Enlil did his handiwork. And the phrase is, you will see and not perceive. You will hear and not understand. And now in the last week, I've come across a technique called the Atlas adjustment. It's out of Switzerland, and there's a practitioner here in Toronto I'm going to go do this with. And what they have learned is that the skull of a human being, and maybe Dr. Lesson can refer to this, is off kilter, that there are 2 prongs on top of the spine, and there's a corresponding 2 holes at the base of the skull. And it's just a little bit askew so that the head is always pointing downward toward the ground, making it more difficult for us to look up to the heavens. And in a painful formative adjustment, they take the skull and lift it back up and put it back on top of the spine. And then it rotates smoothly and brilliantly. So I'll let you know what happens with that, but it struck me that in the meditations in India